I'm Chris Carter here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. Today we go over what we saw on the first day of practice, including why the defensive backs looked good. So did Pat Freiermuth, what happened with George Pickens, and Omar Khan speaks, all in an action-packed episode of the Locked On Steelers podcast. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Steelers, your daily Pittsburgh Steelers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter, bringing you your daily dose of all things of the Pittsburgh Steelers. As always, you can find the show in your favorite podcasting apps and on YouTube. Like this video if you enjoy it. Subscribe to this YouTube channel to get all of your daily Monday through Friday episodes, as well as our bonus content. We thank you for making us your first listen every day because we're your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by LinkedIn. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. All right, Steelers fans, let's get into it. So, busy first day of practice. Now, just a reminder, first day of practice is just like the opening vibes. We don't go too hardly with anything. We'll get into a few different things. First, we'll say why Justin Fields practiced if you missed it. Russell Wilson had a calf injury. Mike Tomlin made the call. He said, hey, you're going to sit out today. So Justin Fields got first team reps. And we'll get into how Justin Fields did in a minute. But I want to lead off with my main observations. And by the way, if you're not subscribed to this YouTube page, you should be, because I also am now going to give daily recaps, short recaps of what I see each day in practice to give you a sense of what happened and then what might lead into the next day's episode, or what might be, think if it's on the weekend, what you might be missing if you're not subscribed to the YouTube page. So go subscribe there. I also post these on my Instagram and my TikTok. All of it is at Carter Critiques on whatever platform you're on. So all that being said, I want to dip into a few things here. I was really impressed by the secondary, and particularly the new defensive backs in both Donte Jackson and DeShon Elliott. Both were all over the place. They were covering people, and there were a couple times, Donte Jackson got beat. It's a corner, but he was lining up with George Pickens a lot and winning a lot and looking really good as he did so, knocking balls away, just sticking in his hip pocket to make it tough for him to make a catch. DeShon Elliott doing the same thing. Also, DeShon Elliott lining up in the slot. Yes, that's right. In the first team, when the first team first went to use the slot, it was DeShon Elliott who was first called to do the job, and then it was Beanie Bishop. And so I thought that was really interesting to see. And when he bumped up into the slot role, Devontae KZ came on and he played another deep safety role next to Minkah Fitzpatrick, which goes back to show you the Steelers really do want to use this 3 safety look. And I think that that's something that could be very interesting for how this team works out. And another thing that they might be buying time until Cam Sutton gets back, because that could be another thing that Cam Sutton contributes to once his suspension is up after 8 weeks. But I wanted to give you a chance to hear from Joey Porter Jr. Well, he also looked fine. It was just interesting. We kind of got a sense of who he's been, but it was interesting to see Donte Jackson and DeShon Elliott fit in so well. Here was Joey Porter Jr. We got a chance to talk to him after practice. Listen closely, because he talks about himself and the team a little bit, but when we get into it with him about DeShon Elliott and Donte Jackson, he had some really interestingly good things to say.
Like Elliott jumped in the slot first for you guys as a safety option. What does his flexibility offer for you guys in the defense to show and do a lot of different things?
Just shows a lot. We could put him wherever we need him. Last year we had problems with our secondary. A lot of guys hurt and a lot of moving pieces. So the fact that he's versatile and can make and move around positions is going to help us in the long run.
What were you impressed by Beanie Bishop and what he's shown? He seemed like he's the next guy in the slot there.
Just a young guy that's ready. Some guys have that mentality coming in ready to play, and I think he has that. So he's a sponge. He's learning. He keeps growing every day. So I'm excited where he goes.
Right. How's the relationship growing with Donte?
Going good. That's my dog. I was always a big fan of him. So the fact that I'm on the same side of the ball and him playing with him is a dream come true on my part. So I just try to learn from him every day as much as possible.
Why did you always like him?
I just liked his gameplay. I liked his chirpiness. He go at people. That's what I kind of do too. So we kind of got the same similarities in that. So I just like his game overall.
Joe, you look back to last year. Did they start you at the right time, or do you think you were ready sooner?
I felt like I was always ready. Just that confidence I had coming in. I always thought I was ready. But it worked out best how they did it. And it's a long season. It's way different from college. So just getting that as a rookie and understanding that I feel like it was probably the best decision.
Right away today, Jackson made a couple plays. Elliott made a couple plays. Is that emblematic of what you were talking about before, the carryover of the work that you guys did to have it come together on day one?
Yeah, it's always good for those guys to come in and make plays off the rip, just to show what they could bring to the table. And I already know that they're great players, so the fact that they could prove it out here day one is good to see.
So it is good to see because the Steelers needs the secondary to be good this year, and they needed to have depth this year. Also, Corey Trice was back practicing and without a knee brace and looked pretty fine in doing so, at least moving around. So this could be a year where the secondary improves from last year. And the secondary at times was a weakness last year, both because, Patrick Peterson, the cornerback situation, other than Joey Porter Jr., was kind of rough. And then, of course, safety got decimated by injury. If they can avoid the injury problems and both Donte Jackson and Joey Porter Jr. turn into this chirping, aggressive, physical, but detailed cornerback pair, and then you also have guys like DeShon Elliott working in the slot and he's coming in and they feel comfortable, this could be a very dangerous secondary. Now, again, it's just first day. It doesn't mean that they are going to be that. It doesn't mean that they're going to go that far. But as we do here on the Locked On Steelers podcast, we take a look at everything. We try to take notes on everything. And as far as the days, my first day winner was Donte Jackson because he proved, hey, at least in the first steps of things, he's right where you want him to be as far as being a veteran starting corner on the outside and where he can fit. And he's going to need to keep proving it. It's not saying that he's won the battle already, but it was a good start for him as well. It was also a good start for Pat Freiermuth, and he played a big role in the practice as well. I want to get into Pat Freiermuth as well as Justin Fields, who, because Russell Wilson was out for the day with a calf injury, and again, he was on the field, he was throwing the football around. I think they just wanted to take it easy on him because he is an older player. Justin Fields did get to show some stuff. I want to get into what I saw with Fields, what we saw with Pat Freiermuth, and what happened with George Pickens and Zach Azzanni, because there's going to be some rumblings about that. We'll get all of that next here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter. Stick with us. We'll be right back. But first, I want to remind you this show is brought to you by eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. That's what brings home the winning trophy, and it's what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. From superchargers to roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more, whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay's Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts that you need at the prices that you want, it's easy to turn your ride into the MVP and bring home that win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay's Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. We're back here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter. We continue our discussion of what I've seen in the first day of training camp. Now, a reminder, the schedule of training camp, I believe, is to go today, Friday, with a full non-padded practice, as well as Saturday and Sunday. They'll have Monday off. And then Tuesday, the pads go on, and that's when it gets really real. We'll have breakdowns from you every day that I'm there at training camp. So stay tuned for that. But there's still a lot of stuff to go on that happened already. And I'll get into the George Pickens thing because if you saw a news tidbit of it, it seemed kind of interesting. I actually had a conversation with Ray Fittipaldo, the first guy who reported the incident that sort of happened between Azzanni and Pickens. We have a full-length conversation about that on the North Shore Drive podcast and the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, so go subscribe there if you want to see my talk with him about what he saw and what's played into it and what the impact might be for George Pickens. And we'll get to that in a second. But before that, I thought it would be worthy to talk about Justin Fields. I liked parts of what I saw with Justin Fields, but like we've said all along, there's also parts I didn't like. There were missed passes, but again, the potential is there. The arm strength is there. The athleticism is there. If he can keep working and polishing his game, he's going to be a guy that I think the Steelers take a hard look at for the future. But of course, Justin Fields coming in, he was going to have some polishing points, and he got to show a little bit the first day, and that all mainly happened because he got a phone call or a text message at 6 a.m. that said, "Hey, you're number one today because Russell's sitting out." And so he had to get ready. He came in, first pass, he completes to Pat Freiermuth over the middle, really good sign. And there were also some other good balls, I'll say, that he threw that should have been hauled in different spots. And I think the receivers did not have a good day for the Steelers. Now, Van Jefferson did haul in a deep pass for a touchdown that was really impressive and a good throw by Justin Fields. But there were also some open passes that he missed, as will happen in training camp, especially when he's kind of revamping everything. But if you want to hear from Justin Fields himself, here was him talking about his day and also about how the Steelers were using the tight ends, because I thought that was a very interesting part of the offense. Here's Justin Fields.
Change your approach at all, Justin?
Did I change my approach?
Come out and show off a little, or
Not really. I just tried to, do my job for my teammates, but I'm not really changing anything. I try to come out here the same guy every day. Just try to be consistent. But, yeah.
Justin, how did it go? How did you feel about the first?
I felt all right. Of course it wasn't perfect. There's always room to improve, but I felt all right. And I missed George. I got bumped into. I'm not even gonna talk about that, but I felt all right overall. Got some good reps in today for sure.
It seemed like you guys emphasized targeting the tight ends a lot. How's it been working with Pat Freiermuth? What does he make it easier in your job?
Yeah, I mean, Pat. The one thing about Pat, he's really savvy. He's smart, and then he also has great hands too. So when you get all those attributes in a tight end, it makes him a great player.
You had a lot of 12 and 13 out there, right?
Yeah, for sure.
As much as you expected, more than you expected.
We're a team that can do a lot of things. We have a lot of good players on offense, so I think we can mix it up a good bit. So not really expecting anything.
So there was Justin Fields talking about it, and we wanted to get into the tight end part because I think that was a really big part of the day. Pat Freiermuth was not just playing tight end, but lining up everywhere as a tight end, on the outside, in the slot, at the regular tight end, as a second tight end, in motion. They were using him in so many different ways, and it continues to show me that he is going to be a big part of this team and a big part of this team's future. They know the talents that he brings in, and he's going to be a person that you're going to want to have on your fantasy roster, because I think he's going to get a lot of targets. And we got a chance to talk to Pat Freiermuth. Now, if you remember, we talked to Pat Freiermuth during OTAs and minicamp, and we asked him, and he said, from what he was told, the plan is to get the tight ends more involved in this offense, and that's something he was excited about working with Arthur Smith for. Well, in just the first day, he felt pretty good about what he saw. When I asked Pat Freiermuth, here's what he said when we talked to him after practice on Thursday.
We heard about tight ends being more involved in this offense. You seem to get a lot of targets. How refreshing was that to see that in just the first step of training?
Yeah, it was very refreshing. First day coming in, seeing the targets increase, and it was great. Trusting my agent, and I'm just focused on football in the season right now.
You want to be here? You optimistic to stick around for a while?
I'm optimistic. I want to be here and love Pittsburgh and love everything about it this couple weeks.
Had the sideline route.
Yeah.
Patch on there.
Yeah.
How did you run that in the NFL game?
Like in the past?
Yep.
Not a whole lot, but I'm looking forward to doing some new things this year.
Is that part of what has you comfortable out there right now and excited that you're doing different things like that?
Yeah, just doing different things, getting used to it, get on the same page with the quarterbacks. It feels great, and I'm looking forward to this year.
Pat, how much did you guys go multi-tight end in the team today?
A lot, yeah. I think majority of it was 12, 13. And, it was great to utilize all of us. Prue had a hell of a catch on a stick nod, and Darnell had a catch, and it was Connor, and it was good to get us all involved today.
You okay with that?
Of course, whatever wins this game.
What does that bring? What's the attraction?
It was able to make matches better against defenses. Kind of pigeonhole defenses, what to do. And know what we're going to get for looks, so we can exploit those looks.
So Pat Freiermuth explaining a few things there. One, the relief that, hey, you said you were going to be part of this offense, at least for the first day. He was a very big part of this offense. But I think it's also another sign that the Steelers are going to be using a lot of different parts of their offense to kind of make up for not having two dynamic wide receivers that are already established. Now, again, maybe Calvin Austin can be that. Maybe Roman Wilson can be that. Maybe Van Jefferson can be that. But right now, they know they have a really serious threat in Pat Freiermuth, and they know they have to find other ways to use him, better ways to use him. I think that's going to be a big part of this offense. And so I think it's a good thing they're using him early, and I think it's a good thing they're also using 12 and 13 personnel, getting all the different tight ends out there. Darnell Washington, though, he still doesn't have the best agility to kind of get, to move left and right and kind of be nimble on his feet. He's still a load to bring down when he gets the ball and he picks up steam. He is going to be a physical presence. He's still a guy that can go up and get the football. I think there's some good things there. Connor Hayward did have a fumble, also had an injury in the game, but in the practice. But I think that's stuff like that's gonna happen. I think that he'll be fine. And they still have other guys like Michael Pruitt and Rodney Williams that are all waiting in the wings. Tight end is going to be an asset for the Steelers, and it's going to be interesting to see how well Arthur Smith uses it. So that's something there to watch. Now, the other part of the offense that we absolutely have to talk about is George Pickens and what happened with Zach Azzanni. Now, I have to admit, I did not see this happen live. I was watching plays. I was watching things break down, but apparently after a play, according to Ray Fittipaldo from my partner at the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, he brought up how he told me that basically after a play, George Pickens, didn't go at least 110% on a play. Zach Azzanni kind of got on him about it, and George Pickens didn't respond to him too well. Now there's mixed reports because Ray kind of caught it in the middle of it. Some people say that George Pickens lifted up Zach Azzanni in the sense of like he was showing him how he does block in certain plays, saying like, this is me doing it. Some people saying that Zach Azzanni lifted up George Pickens. I'm not entirely sure what happened there, but what was very visible and what was seen and kind of confirmed by multiple people was that George Pickens was very upset at the end of practice, and teammates had to come over and kind of calm him down because he was not happy with what Zach Azzanni was telling him. And I think that's not great that George Pickens is having a response like that. But I do think it is great that he's getting tested right away by Zach Azzanni. This is a new receivers coach who's not going to take any nonsense, who's going to be up in your face and on your case 24/7, 365. Mike Tomlin was a guy who last year couldn't exactly be over just George Pickens when he had a quarterback problem, when he had his defense was beat up. Eventually he did get to George Pickens, and George Pickens straightened himself out. But they cannot afford to have the head coach to jump in and do everything. The receivers coach has to be responsible for that. That's where Zach Azzanni, we talked about him during OTAs and minicamp and the level of detail that he's putting into the work and forcing the Steelers receivers to have to learn and be sharper as they learn. Calvin Austin talked about how he is not accepting mediocrity in his work and in practices. And I think that's a new thing for George Pickens. I think that's something that he's going to have to get used to really quickly too, because the Steelers aren't going to slow down for anyone. They traded away Donte Johnson this past year, who was one of the best route runners in all of football, and he was a veteran guy. And I think a big part of it was Donte Johnson wasn't the kind of locker room presence that you wanted with the way that they're trying to rebuild things for the Steelers. And if George Pickens won't be a part of that, they're going to find another replacement for him too, no matter how many touchdowns he hauls in. Well, that's not true. They'll find, if he's Antonio Brown levels, they'll find a way. But if he's not, best of the best in the NFL for multiple seasons, yeah, they're going to find a way to move on from it. And that's why I think he has to do better, but I also think it's good that he's being pushed now. And now one of the things I'm going to be watching for is how does he respond? What is their temperament with each other on the second day of practice? What is it like, when George wins and loses battles against DBs out there? How does Zach Azzanni deal with him? Does he stay in his face? Does George Pickens respond better to him doing those things? Those could all be really important things that I think that come to light as the season rolls on, and something that we'll continue to watch here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. But we also have to talk about Omar Khan, because he also spoke to media after practice on Thursday, and he gave some interesting tidbits about contract situations and, of course, some of the main players that are in this situation. I want to get his thoughts on the show. We'll talk about we'll bring up a clip and talk about what he said here next on the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter. Stick with us. We'll be right back. But first, I want to remind you that this show is also brought to you by LinkedIn. LinkedIn Jobs is where you can go to help hiring for your small business. If you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role, that is why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team faster and free. LinkedIn isn't just a job board. LinkedIn helps you hire professionals you can't find anywhere else, even those who aren't actively searching for a new job but might be open to the perfect role. In a given month, over 70% of LinkedIn users don't visit other leading job sites. So if you're not looking on LinkedIn, you're looking in the wrong place. On LinkedIn, 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. Hire professionals like a professional on LinkedIn. LinkedIn knows the small businesses are wearing so many hats and might not have the time or resources to hire. So post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnfl. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnfl to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Back here on the Locked On Steelers podcast, I'm your host, Chris Carter. We continue our show here today. I wanted to talk about Omar Khan because he spoke to media as he kind of always does right before or right as training camp is starting, and he answers some interesting questions. And of course, there's burning questions on negotiations that should or could be happening. Cam Hayward, Pat Freiermuth, Najee Harris, all those guys will be addressed in this upcoming video here, where we got to sit down and he kind of took questions from the media, that being Omar Khan. But I think it's really interesting to hear, him trying to walk the wire of not saying anything, but also like being pointed about the things that he wants to be pointed about. And of course, like he wouldn't get into negotiations, but Cam Hayward spoke on Thursday as well. And when Cam Hayward spoke, he talked about, how he's looking forward to things working. And it sounds, at least from what Omar Khan's saying, that, hey, the Steelers do like Cam Hayward sticking around. They think that he's part of the future. Now, this is also the same Omar Khan that told us at the combine that, they have full faith in Kenny Pickett. And then days later they signed Russell Wilson, and then days later they traded away Kenny Pickett. So a lot of different things can absolutely happen when it comes to how Omar Khan handles any situation. I think that's the kind of the lesson that you learn over covering this stuff or listening to this stuff over the years, is that GMs and coaches, their job is to keep up the smoke screen, not let any of the teams know what they're doing, and keep the sanctity of their space. So it doesn't explain everything, but I do think it's interesting what Omar Khan did have to say when we talked about Cam Hayward, Najee Harris. I also got a question about DeShon Elliott in there. So we'll get into all that next here. So check out what Omar Khan had to say at his Steelers press conference on Thursday.
Omar, Cam was saying earlier that, he doesn't want to get his hopes up either way, either high or low, because you never know what's going to happen. But he kind of indicated that maybe something might be going on. But is there anything at all? Are you open to that with him?
Open to. I'll say this. We think. I don't want to talk about it. Like I said, I'm not going to talk about a specific negotiation. But I think Cam's got a lot of football ahead of him still, and I'll leave it at this. I expect him to be here for years to come.
Omar, Cam's going into 14th season, I think, coming off a pretty serious injury. Your confidence in him seems resolute. Where's that?
He had a, historically he's been, last year, he had a rough stretch there, but I'm confident the way he works, and Cam, the person, the player, obviously, and I have no doubt that Cam has a lot of football left.
Omar, why not pick up the option on Najee? What was that conversation like with him?
Yeah, I called Najee when we made the decision, and we just felt at the time it was the right decision for the club. I'll keep the conversation Najee and I had between us, but I can tell you, we think the world of Najee, and just because that option was an exercise doesn't mean that he doesn't have a future here. He represents us well. He's you guys know what he's like as a football player. He's a great football player. He's great to have in the building. So, I still see a future with Najee.
Speaking on the slot opportunity on defense, DeShon Elliott was lined up a bit there today in practice. Was that part of the excitement of bringing him into the organization, was the flexibility he'd offer to do stuff like that?
Yeah, I think it's day one, and I think there's 3 more weeks here to try different things, and that's just part of the process.
So several things there. You see what Omar Khan's doing. He's trying to put out fires before they even start, trying to put a wet blanket on things. Like I asked him about DeShon Elliott in the slot, and he's like, let's not get carried away here. He did the same thing also when asked about the wide receiver trade. Multiple people, including myself, tried to kind of get into that, and I just kept kind of saying, guys, like I'm focused on the 90 guys who are here right now. And so he kept kind of doing that. But that's what good GMs are supposed to do. They're not supposed to let the world know what they're really up to, or what they're really planning, or what they're really liking. So I think that, those things make sense. Now, when it comes to Cam Hayward and him and Omar Khan saying that, that he's not going to get into negotiations, it does sound like if Cam Hayward's saying that he feels like things moving positively, and Omar Khan says that they see a future with Cam Hayward and how important he is, I think those are good signs that maybe they find a suitable deal to keep things moving forward. I also think it would behoove the Steelers to look at certain situations. And I said this on the North Shore Drive podcast as well, but I think if they're planning to use Pat Freiermuth in the manner that they're talking about, that contract extension better come soon, because if he goes into this season and lights it up, he's going to demand whatever he wants, and that's going to be really expensive. And then you might get into a situation where you can't afford it because he wants so much money. So I think Omar Khan, as much as he's talking about like, hey, we're not doing, they are absolutely looking at trying to lock up certain situations. I think Pat Freiermuth is absolutely part of that. I think Najee Harris could be. And like, you hear what he said about Najee Harris and how they value him and things like that. I think that the not picking up his fifth-year option was another thing they've done to not pigeonhole themselves into having to commit, money beyond this year. And I think they're trying to keep as much of their situation as open as possible. They don't want to be forced to make any specific decision. I've talked about that before. In fact, I think they talked about that yesterday with how the Steelers were handling things. And this just further kind of keeps it that way. Because again, Najee Harris, it's not like Najee Harris is pouting while he's on the field out there. In fact, during practice, you saw Najee Harris. There was one time George Pickens caught a long pass. Najee Harris wasn't even in the play. And here you see him like running down the field screaming, let's go, George. And he's just yelling all these things. And he's talking trash to the defense because his offensive teammates are doing well. And he does that a lot. And I think it speaks to he's not really mad about the situation. I mean, he wishes that it wouldn't be happening, but he's here to work with the Steelers. And I think that that's where Omar Khan, they appreciate that. And I think that that'll go, that if Najee Harris plays well this year behind a revamped offensive line and everything, that could be the ticket to maybe keeping him around long-term or them figuring out a deal. But, also talking about, other things with Omar Khan and Cam Hayward and how things are playing out. I think it's going to be really interesting to see when certain deals happen because there are no hold-ins this year. And that's very interesting because you think back to recent years, again, other players who've gotten contracts during camp, you think of Donte Johnson, you think of Alex Highsmith, you think of TJ Watt, you think of Minkah Fitzpatrick. All those guys have held in where they show up to camp, they're there, but they're not practicing. They're off to the side. They're doing their own thing. They're kind of not pressing too hard. And then eventually, you get the they get the deal. It changes. They're showing up at practice and everything's fine. But in this sense, I think it's going to be interesting to see, how they try to get this done with these players who aren't, not performing. They are performing, I guess, is to say, to phrase that better. But Pat Freiermuth, Cam Hayward, and even Najee Harris kind of even said it, like, there's no leverage right now. We got to go prove stuff. I think that's where a lot of things are for the Steelers, that they're trying to prove things and prove that certain guys are trying to prove that they're good, so that the team can make calculated decisions off of those things. And that's why it's just going to take time during training camp, which we will be at all summer long, all throughout training camp. You can get all of my responses here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter. Thanks so much for tuning in. As always, you can find me on your favorite podcasting apps and on YouTube. Like this video if you enjoyed. Subscribe to this channel to get all of your daily Monday through Friday episodes, as well as our bonus content. We thank you for making us your first listen every day, because we're your team every day. And you can also find me at Carter Critiques on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, anywhere. That's usually my handle. I'm also, again, dropping short recaps of each practice, after practice, both on this YouTube, on my TikTok, on my Instagram. Get it there, or anywhere. Get it anywhere that you'd like. But we're going to try to keep you up to date with all the things happening here at the Steelers training camp practices. It's just day one in the books now. Day 2 is coming up. We'll see what happens there, and I'll have my reactions right here on the YouTube page. Stay tuned for all that and more here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter. We'll see you again very soon.